You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is September 9th, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Monday?
Well, Spencer, hello. I'm doing quite well. We are on the precipice of Season 1 launch, so it's a bit of a weird day. We're at the very end of this sort of honeymoon period of, the early part of War Within, the preseason part. Today is the last day for that. So we'll be moving into the actual sort of end game starting tomorrow, which means there's probably some stuff that we don't totally know about at the moment, but we're going to talk about kind of what the plan is for this week coming up and the following week and even beyond. Man, it's going to be a lot. I have all these characters leveled and it's like, well, I guess now I have endgame stuff to do on them starting this week, so it's going to be time to do that. So I kind of ramped down my playtime a bit this week. I had some stuff going on. I had some other commitments and other stuff to do, which was nice. And that's kind of a cool thing about the slow burn here with getting the season started was, it wasn't cutting into something else I had to do, or I didn't have to say no to something because I had some WoW stuff I had to do. So that was nice. It was like the first week of school around here, and
right.
We had other stuff going on. So like having that slow burn kind of worked out, and I think maybe things will be settling more into that sort of routine starting up. So now it's maybe a decent timing for the season to start versus if it had started this past week, it would have been a real problem for me personally.
Yeah, I certainly have enjoyed the slow burn. I think it's worked out really well for me, and so I've been quite pleased with that. I've really spent the extra time. So this week for me, leveled an earthen, so my monk is all leveled up. I did boost the monk, and this is something that I said I would report back on, because we were talking about how Robin was coming in at like 368 or 74 or something like that into the expansion. A boosted 70 comes in at 463 item level. That's where a boosted 70 comes in. And I was like, oh, so like, don't you think there should be like a catch-up mechanic or a vendor that like sells at least 450s to someone? Like, just, or like when Dalaran explodes and like litters the ground with loot, maybe one of those early things is you're collecting up gear and you can choose to either vendor that gear or you can choose to use that gear, since literally all the stores and shops just blew up. So there'll probably be a lot of stuff flying around. There's different ways they could have sort of gone about ensuring that players were at least at that, what they've declared through the boost at minimum threshold of item level. It's something they could have done.
Yeah, it is a little weird. I mean, like in her case, she just got stuck in like the absolute worst spot because, there was the gear update thing, which came in if your tune was inactive for however long, and that was decent. It wasn't that high, but it was pretty good. And then, then the updated boost that you get with the expansion pre-order, or what, I don't know what edition you had to buy to get the boost, but then the boost like sets you up to just jump in and play. But unless they were giving you something, there wasn't anything in the game that you could really go get. Like there was the catch-up gear from the event, which was, that would take you even beyond that. And there was other stuff you could get if you were playing like Dragonflight content in the weeks leading up that would be, comparable, but nothing, at least not that I've found. Maybe there is something somewhere and I just don't know about it, but I haven't encountered anything that sells like vendor greens just to get you started.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to go, oh yeah, no, so we were bang on right that she was about 100 eye levels or 80 eye levels below where essentially the devs had decided people should be starting 70 at, which was interesting. So you're like, okay, well, good to know. So yeah, 463 apparently is the level 70 beginner gear that they want people hopping into quests with. So Monk went really smooth, leveled all the way up, ended up doing jewel crafting and mining on that character. So I have a Herbalist Alchemist and a jewel crafter miner. And man, it has been really nice to have this week to just focus on professions as part of, like renown, professions, finishing up quest lines, leveling characters. This extra time has been really nice because a lot of the profession stuff I didn't get to dig really deep into. I just didn't, I didn't play enough to dig really deep into for all the different, like especially jewel crafting during Dragonflight. So I didn't know things like, oh, if you want to be able to cut a variety of gems, you have to really talent into that coloration of gem. And you have to do that for each of the individual different types of gems. Oh, and if you want to be prospecting those gems as opposed to just orange gems all the time, you need to spec into prospecting and then actually spec into the different gem types you want to find from prospecting. And you're like, okay, so this is like a whole other thing. And by doing that and having the restriction on profession knowledge, then you're not doing like your necklace or your ring, because you really have to make a choice as to what you're going to be focused on. And so since a lot of my stuff is based around like rating and M+, a lot of my choice on professions has been like, yeah, I want to go into potions and flasks over going to transmutes. I know people went to transmutes, made a whole bunch of gold doing transmute stuff, but at the same time, they then can't do flasks and potions, which I can, so that's kind of a nice bonus for me. And a similar thing of going into gems with jewel crafting over top of the actual gear. I don't really care that I can't craft a really fancy ring or neck for my monk at the moment, because that's fine. We'll have gear that replaces those spaces. It won't be as good as obviously crafting something really high end in those spots, but at least I can craft the gems that I need. And so really when I was crafting gems, it was like, all right, well, what gems does my main need? Well, they need, mastery haste, and then they might need haste mastery, and then they might need, you sort of work your way through it and you go, what something is something that someone else might need? Well, they might need haste versatility. And so you're like, start working your way through which are the prime gems that each class might need. So you're sort of learning those as you go. And in the back of your brain the whole time, you're looking at your patron crafting orders and going, well, these require me to go into this other talent area. I don't want to go into that talent area, but then I could get more professional knowledge if I did. Is it worth doing that? Is it not? Like, oh my God. So there's so much stuff involved in the decisions you're making profession-wise. It's been nice to have a week to just sort of get your head around it and figure that sort of stuff out. That's been really enjoyable. So yeah, I definitely have appreciated this slower week, and I'm looking forward to going into this next week. Is there anything you want to highlight about your playtime this week?
Yeah, I mean, really, I didn't actually spend a lot of time on the warrior. I sort of got a decent, baseline item level just from doing heroics that first full week of release. And, I crafted a piece and I had the renown pieces. I did just, spend a bunch of crests and valor stones to upgrade that stuff up a bit higher. And I might even do some more of that, like, tomorrow after I do a world quest lap and get my weeklies and stuff, because the holding cap on valor stones makes you kind of approach stuff differently, because you don't want to do stuff when you're capped on them, so you got to spend them. And then I'm doing a lot of stuff right now, so
I just want to highlight on that because you're talking about valor stones. The valor stones thing to me is an interesting one, because I had a similar situation where I started to approach cap and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to spend a bunch on things. So I spent like 1,300 and then sort of got back up towards cap again and was like, okay, well, I guess I'll spend a bunch. So I spent like another 1,100, and then sort of I've been doing that here and there. I think now I'm at 450 or 500 of them, and I'm like, okay, now I just chill and gather, because I'm going to want to upgrade the stuff that comes from Mythic Zeros and from, higher end delves and things like that this week. So I'm 100% going to want to have Valor Stones to use on those, because you are going to use Valor Stones every step of the way. So it's just that consideration of, okay, now I want to bank and I want to save and I want to get back up to that 1,800 point where I can then invest all of those into upgrading the newer gear that I'm going to be getting this week. So yeah, if you're someone who's been sitting near cap, you're going to get another big boost. There'll be another 2,000, 3,000 Valor Stones you can earn over this next week fairly easily. And if you are going to be running Mythic Zeros and Delves and whatnot, you're going to earn even more. So just keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with going, hey, you know what? I'm just going to push my weapon up to a 593, and that will help me just clear all of the content that I'm going to want to be doing, and just, get in there and do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's certainly something that you can invest in. So just keep in mind that you're not hitting that cap for sure.
Yeah, right. That's a really big thing, especially with like a new reset week coming up, and I'm sort of banking up all my world quests. So like I did the initial lap this week and kind of cleared it up, but then I was looking and okay, anything that rolled up that wasn't gonna expire before reset, I'm not doing. So I have a ton of world quests to do post reset this week, and then a bunch of those reward bonus Valor Stones on top of whatever else you get just from doing stuff. So Like I'm sitting on maybe about 700 or something like that. You know, not a lot, but and not also not really near cap, but definitely in striking distance. So once I do all my weekly stuff and get all my caches and get all my keys, I will certainly be well over cap from all the stuff that I'll be doing. Like if I have, well, assuming we have time to play before raid time, depending on how maintenance goes tomorrow. But you know, so yeah, I figured, you know what, let me just spend the stuff. The low level crest, you know, I'm going to be playing normal heroic raid and then eventually some mythic raid. I'm going to be playing as high keystones as I can get into as soon as I can. The low level crests aren't really going to do me any good. So there's no reason not to just spend them on this gear that I have access to. So I didn't really play the warrior that much this week, all things considered. I did do, you know, all the new campaign quests that came in. I think just the way the story was presented in this expansion was incredible. I really enjoyed what they did, and the big moments, and then the kind of campaign finale that came out this past week was incredible. I really loved it, and yeah, I made my earthen and I did the intro. That was really cool. It's, you know, it's a little bit maybe less robust than some of the other allied race intros, but the whole process, like the entire expansion, is sort of like an earthen allied race intro. So, you know, we've talked a lot over the years about how allied races are bad, and why don't you just let me play the thing from the beginning? And I think there's still validity to that, but when they do it the way that they did it with the earthen, where, you know, a lot of the early part of the expansion really revolves around getting to know these people and know their culture and interact with them and, you know, help them out with stuff. I think it makes a lot more sense, especially in a world where we have war bands and we have this sort of support, like intentional support in the game to like play multiple characters and to speed up, you know, redoing content or whatever. I think if you can do allied races the way they've done earthen, then I think they're okay, right? I think it might actually in some ways be better than the old model of just add new races with buying the expansion. So maybe that's what it took. You know, it took all this other support from these other systems to make this sort of like unlock the allied race thing actually feel good. But I thought it was great. I love the intro where you sort of define your character's identity, like who they were and who they want to be. That was really, I love the way they worked that in. And yeah, I made a warrior because of, you know, I have 30 some tunes of level 70 plus. I have every class covered, and it's like, well, a warrior's a thing I might actually play. And I boosted it, yeah, because like I didn't want to do that low level thing. And then you just unlock the heritage armor. There's no heritage armor quest, but again, like the whole expansion is kind of the intro and heritage armor quest for the earthen. So that was fun. After I did that, the next project was just maxing out the paladin. I got the paladin to 80 and did a lap around to get his caches for the week and everything. Just moving those resonant crystals around to get all the renowned gear on everybody. That it's so nice to be able to do that and just get like 3 really strong pieces of gear right out of the gate. Start up the demon hunter. That's next on my list, but I played her. I didn't even hit level 71. I just kind of logged in, did, you know, got her set up in Dornegal, and that was all I really had time for. But yeah, a big focus this week was like, okay, whose turn is it to do their weekly outdoor stuff? You know, get the caches, go do you know, awakening the machine and go do the special assignments or whatever. Make sure I got 4 keys. I didn't do any bountiful delves yet. I'm just saving those keys for this week. And we'll see if that turns out to be a good or bad idea, because how much time am I really going to have across 4 tunes to do all these bountiful delves, right? Like maybe really not enough time to do anywhere near all of that, but I figured it couldn't hurt to have them available. You know, if I want to play a tune, maybe I have like a free weekend afternoon or evening or something, and I want to just slam delves on a tune, then I got the keys there to do it, you know? So I think that's kind of how I'm going to approach it for now until I see what I really feel like doing. Just having options feels nice. And, you know, well, it's hard to see. Like right now, like obviously anybody who's listened to the show for a while, you know, like I have a true main, and the warrior's the only thing I really play ever and the only thing I really care about. So tomorrow, as soon as servers come up, it's going to be all about doing everything I can do on that warrior. And then we'll see how the rest of it shakes out, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to highlight, you mentioned the keys there, having your 4 keys for the week. The other factor in there is actually, there was almost more than 4 keys for the week, because there were world quests that handed out key fragments. So if you're looking around at world quest rewards, in general, it's good to run your world quests every week that you can, all the world quests you can, because they just give you reputation towards your renown, and your renown's warband wide, which means it is actually helpful for all of your characters, like you highlighted. you're able to essentially buy some renowned gear right away, which then on new characters, which then allows you to essentially have a higher item level just walking into level 80, which is really nice. A lot of people certainly can take advantage of that on alternate characters. But yes, the other thing that you had through those world quests was these key fragments. When you collect 100 of those, you can then turn them into another key. These fragments you also get from the World Soul memory events, which is something a lot of people are going to start jumping into this week as well. I know people have been holding on to doing Bountiful Delves, but when you do a Bountiful Delve and you use a key at the end of it, you'll get a item that allows you to experience the World Soul memories that are spread out throughout the land, and you can essentially go to those and participate in those, and you'll get more key fragments potentially towards getting another key. So I imagine if people have banked up enough keys at this point, they might do enough Bountiful Delves that they then earn additional keys and then can go do more Bountiful Delves. It'll be an interesting week for that to see whether or not there's people out there who are doing like 12 or 14 Bountiful Delves in a week this week because they've saved up so much. It'll be interesting to see how all that pans out. I do kind of wish that Blizzard had just thrown a cap on the amount of keys people could have, because then people would have just been doing Bountiful Delves and it'd feel less like, hey, we're coming into Tuesday, what's everyone going to do? We're going to essentially try and run as many Bountiful Delves as we possibly can as quickly as possible to try and get as many rewards as we can. I think that's less of a... It just feels very min-maxy, kind of not fun gameplay versus going, yeah, there's a cap of 4 keys, so you do your keys every week. Yeah, that you can collect up the fragments, so the fragments have a different kind of value, because you're like, yeah, you can have a 5th key technically if you just have enough fragments lying around that you can do a 5th one in a week, but that's kind of the min-max, extent of the whole thing. Would have been kind of nice to me, because I do feel like there's a... I don't like when the best way to do something is to not experience content until the specific moment to experience content. I think it just isn't as ideal.
I mean, we'll see how much it ends up really mattering. You know, I don't know that it will, but I think, my approach to the game and the way that I've played it so far, it's just like the item level is only, whatever. It's equivalent to the capped heroic dungeon item level. So it really just wasn't worth using a limited resource to me, because I'm going to shoot right past this item level threshold very soon,
Absolutely.
I think there might be something to be said about the item level cap was held a little too low, in this period. That's one thing I think that I did feel a little bit, because if we're stepping into normal raid tomorrow, that starts at like 597, I think the first boss drops. So, having stuff that's like 25 item levels below that is kind of where most of your rewards stop for 2 weeks is a little weird. It's like there should be another step there. We should be able to get halfway to that gap, Yeah.
I mean, I'm 587 on my druid at the moment. So I basically just did heroic dungeons and then used Valor Stones to upgrade gear, and we had the 2 weeks to do. Well, we had basically 2 weeks to do that. So I do feel like most people are probably shooting for 585 for going into normal raid, and I don't think that's too low for going into normal raid. I think that...
No, I don't think so either, but I think they could have goosed the heroic stuff all the way up to 580, at least for this past week, because that's where it's going to be tomorrow.
I would have preferred there not be 2 tiers of what heroic loot was worth. I'm with you on that. I think it would have been much better off if heroic gear had launched at the end game heroic item level that it was going to be at, as opposed to, no, for these 2 weeks, heroic gear is 13 item levels lower than it will be after when season 1 kicks off. It's just a weird thing to do. I'm with you that I wish that was not the case for how that works out. But yeah, the other stuff I got up to this past week, the things I wanted to highlight, there was a quest chain I went into in City of Threads that, as an FYI for anyone who hasn't been paying attention to this or doing this, if you're trying to actually do all the world quests, need to click on the City of Threads, because there are world quests within the City of Threads that don't show up on the map when you look at the map for the zone. So just be sure you're actually clicking on the city and seeing, especially there's regular pet battle ones that happen inside of the city that you might not be paying attention to. And you probably should be doing those if you're trying to get all the renown that you're wanting to get, or do all the quests and world quests that you're trying to get. There's also, I guess I'll highlight this too, there's also vendors inside of the City of Threads that sell off more of the knowledge books for your professions for Kedge. So if you haven't gone there and gathered up your knowledge books for your profession yet, be sure you head down to the City of Threads and go to the vendors there. You can just find them on your mini map with the profession skill books that all show up there. And just, yeah, they just sell off a bunch of professional knowledge for Kedge, which is great for people who are trying to get professional knowledge stuff done. But I did find a quest in there that I needed to do that involved Viazi. And this was a Nerubian who was afraid of creatures with fewer limbs. It was like the anti-arachnophobia quest, which I thought was hilarious. And it also ended very sadly. But yes, it was a cool quest to sort of be like, oh, this is someone who I guess is afraid of anyone with fewer than arachnid style legs. And I just thought that was a cute little nod to put in there if people haven't experienced that yet. There is a bit of a sad ending to it, so just be aware of that. But yes, it is a cool quest that they chose to do, the anti-arachnophobia.
And that NPC's like therapist was Mr. Sunflower, who you may remember from Dragonflight, from doing the sniff and seeking.
Right.
There's that one sniff and seeking instance that you get where they're having like the tea party, and there's all these people that are webbed at this table, and they're supposed to be sipping this tea, and they're these web cocoons, and Mr. Sunflower is trying to help them with their identity. It was the weirdest, one of the weirdest and creepiest things in Dragonflight, and I was like. You know, I had some thoughts like when we saw that there were going to be Nerubians involved in like a Nerubian zone in War Within. Like, I wonder if Mr. Sunflower is going to be down there anywhere. And yeah, there he is.
Yep. So that was one of the things I wanted to highlight. The other one that came in here was the brand. I want to highlight the brand delves. Like the delve rewards are totally warband wide. So if you level up Bran over time, if you haven't been paying attention to this, your Bran is the same as your Bran on every character, which is really nice, including Curios. Like they're just, if you power him up on one character and then you level an alt, this is what I found out with my Earthen. I was like, man, he just works on all of these different levels and has all of these abilities and is already like level 13 or whatever it is I pushed him up to. So that was really nice. And then the other thing I hopped into on Saturday was the fishing derby, which I knew was going on and had heard about inside Hallowfall. But yeah, the fishing derby is certainly something that's worthwhile participating in. There's a bunch of unique rewards, including a food that increases your perception, which is really cool because that is certainly not something that you find easily inside of the game, are foods that do things like that. So that's certainly worthwhile doing. It also, that's the Ghoulish Delight is the name of that food, which also gives a reason to catch the ghoulfish, which literally in the flavor text on ghoulfish says, throw this back. There's like no need for it. And actually there is. So do not pay attention to the flavor text that's on that. You do get a curse that lasts, I think, 5 minutes. Just, obviously wait out the 5 minutes for them to go away as you sort of continue on with your fishing journey. That's fine to do. And then, yeah, if you harvest down 5 of those ghoulfish, you get this prepared ghoulfish meat that you can use to make Ghoulfish Delight, which is a soulbound food that gets you additional fishing skill, but also just additional perception, which is pretty awesome. So certainly worthwhile getting. And while I was on that same profession journey, I learned how to make the Vials of Truesight, which is the camouflaged herbs and mining nodes become revealed. Which, holy man, are there ever a lot of those? That like tripled my income on herbing missions that I was going out and doing just by drinking those. So I finally got a lot of the experimentation done. I think I have 1 or 2 experiments left I need to run before I have unlocked the things I need to unlock when it comes to the experimentation. I was very unlucky with my wild experimentation on getting the meticulous one. It took me forever to finally have that happen, which I disliked. I almost wish that there was a way to spec into meticulous so that you could just have it guaranteed early on, because it took quite a bit of mats and resources to finally get there. But now that I'm there, I'm getting all these things unlocked. The favorite world quest of the week for me was the Chew on This world quest that was up yesterday, which is you ride around a Ramolith and it just eats grass outside of Dornogal and it slowly moves faster and then the quest finishes. And I was like, this is the best world quest I've ever. It's right next to a major city. It takes like 20 seconds to complete, and you get to ride a Ramolith. Like, I just don't know what to tell you. This is the best world quest I've done in a long time. Yeah. Man.
I mean, there's other things you can do to fill the bar, but if you eat the grass, it finishes like, I think each one is like 10% or I don't even know, maybe more than that. But yeah, what was it in Shadowlands that they started messing around with this World Quest 2.0 thing, that they were going to be like more involved and stuff? And
yeah.
I don't really think that was the way.
No.
Yeah, we've moved away from the
Yeah.
World Quest 2.0. We're back to World Quest 1.0. Most of them are like very minimal time investment. Go check out some part of the world, do some little thing, you're done, you move on. And then, if you want that kind of more intensive outdoor experience, they do have like the special assignments and the spreading the light thing, which kind of I think scratches that itch for players that want it.
Right.
But if you're just trying to complete World Quest, man, they're great. Like most of the ones I found are very minimal time commitments as you're kind of cruising around the world.
Yeah, the other thing I want to highlight, Jason, is I did Lore Master, and I know you've gone in to do Lore Master. I assume you've completed Lore Master by this point? Yes?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I had it all done. Like I got like the hot fix completion because I was waiting for them to fix that one thing that was broken, and then I like
right.
I didn't even like get the reward. I mean, I got it, but it wasn't. I didn't get a toast. I got nothing. It was just like, oh yeah, I guess that did complete at some point.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to know if you noticed, because I actually could not find one, and I didn't notice. Where's the mandatory essential poop quest in this expansion?
I don't think there is one.
I don't think there's like how is this possible?
Off the top of my head, I don't think I encountered one. Yeah, I don't know. It's clearly an oversight.
It is.
This is what happens. They rushed it out the door too fast. They forgot to do the poop quest. The quality is just slipping.
It's just
what happens.
Yep. I gotta say, like it was very strange. It was highlighted to me earlier in the week where I was just like, wait a minute, I don't think there was one. I think they just completely missed this opportunity.
I mean, considering you have farms in like multiple zones too, right? That would have been a good opportunity.
They literally have one you plant freaking flowers in, you plant seeds in and grow them. Like how is there not a poop quest involved in any of it? It was very strange. Yeah, just putting it out there. All right. But yes, that was a lot of stuff I want to highlight this past week. Outside of that, Jason, are we good to ship into the next chunk of what's going on?
Yeah, I think so. Right. I mean, it's a big week, man. We had a lot of, not only we knew season 1 was starting this week, but we also got a ton of news since we spoke last. So we're just off and running at this point.
Yes, we are. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is hopefully the World Quest bonus event. That's what we currently have on the calendar. So if that is correct, then it means that the Sign of the Emissary buff is up and the reputation gains from World Quests are going to be increased by 50%, which means for those of you out there who still have not done their World Quests yet today, just hang on to them until this event kicks off and you'll get more, World Quest reputation from doing that. The quest reward for completing 10 World Quests, this is how it worked previously, we'll see if it still works this way, was 2,500 rep to the major faction of your choice. Hopefully this is still the case, because that is 1 renown level, which is very nice. I know that right now I'm focused on getting renown towards ones that give me more profession knowledge. there's like 2 or 3 renown levels that will give you profession knowledge, and so I'm specifically focusing on reaching those objectives, because that I think will be the biggest benefit for me. But yes, take advantage of the World Quest bonus event while it's up this week. Doing those 10 World Quests will make a huge difference for you, and just doing World Quests in general. I will also say, if you're someone who hasn't been picking up contracts yet, those scribes out there making contracts for different factions, you can do that as well. They can be really pricey. I have not picked them up when they were too expensive, but if they're at an affordable point, it is nice to have that extra bit of reputation per World Quest that you're completing. So that's another good way to get up there with the renowns. All right, we have the first week of a world boss is going to be happening this week, which means that Kordak, the Dormant Protector, the big construct in the Isle of Dorn, will be up and about and dropping 603 eye level loot with plate, legs, and waist, mail, chest, and feet, leather, feet, and legs, cloth, chest, and waist, and a verse crit ring. I'm not going to highlight the abilities this boss does, because I think everyone deserves to experience this for the first time, and then we can talk next week about what we thought about it and how we did it and whatnot. But yes, if you want to go into your journal and check it out, go for it. But I won't spoil the construct in the Isle of Dorn that's going to be popping up. I wonder though if Kordak, the Dormant Protector, isn't that just a big robot that we fight at the end of the quest chain for the Storm Riders?
It's similar, but it's a different one, I think. You can actually like see it if you fly around where it is in Isle of Dorn. It's there and it's literally dormant. And it looks a little different, but it's very similar to the thing that pops up at in that story. I assume that this is going to be the world boss for the week. I don't know for sure, but it is the first zone, and typically they have the first zone start the rotation of the world bosses, and there's one per zone. So if they end up starting on a different zone, then apologies, but my expectation is that Kordak will be the boss for this week. So just don't forget to do the world boss like on every character as soon as you can, because you want a shot at that 603 item level loot, which is going to be huge this week.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Like, it's the biggest upgrade it's ever going to be.
Yep.
So yeah, just remember to do that. Put that on your checklist for whatever tunes you're playing, and I guess we'll see. One thing that always happens with world bosses when they're new is, there's a world quest to kill them, right? Which you get some other kind of reward to, and it counts towards whatever your world quest objectives are for completing them. It almost always bugs for new world bosses, and sometimes you got to kill them twice or whatever. Like, make sure that you actually are on the quest when you're fighting the boss if you can. Sometimes if you kind of leave the subzone and come back, then that can wake it up. You're gonna be using the group finder probably, so sometimes when you phase in, it's like it doesn't pick up the fact that the world quest should be active. So, if maybe just keep an eye on that stuff, and maybe try to wiggle around a little bit if you want to avoid having to kill Kordak multiple times on a tune, because you want the quest reward too. I'm sure it's going to be something halfway decent. They usually rewards are going to rep or something, and if we get the bonus and all that.
Even if it's just rep or a big chunk of Valor Stones or something, it's worthwhile picking up and grabbing for sure. So you get that out of the way. Now, this was an interesting week, Jason, because the Call of the World Soul was not a quest that I could pick up on my main character.
No, after all that, after as much as we covered it last week, then they swerved us and they gave us a much more like story-focused thing for the weekly cache, which was awesome. I really liked the way that played out, but what you had to do was basically dungeons was the way to do that. You get a little bit from treasures, and you could get a little bit from world rares, but dungeon bosses gave like 15 of the 100 shards you needed per.
Yeah.
So I guess really what it comes down to is we don't know enough about the weekly rotation to know what to expect right now, but just check in right outside the inn in Dornegal for your weekly quest for the cache. And maybe it's going to be a Call of the World Soul this week, and you'll have the choice, or maybe it's going to be some special thing that everybody's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Because the Call of the World Soul, when we first saw it, was those either complete 6 world quests, do some snuffling where you dig 5 disturbed earth sites. There was a dungeon on normal difficulty or higher you could complete, and there was doing the Awakening the Machine for 20 cumulative waves. Those 4 things were the Call of the World Soul, so we'll see if that pops up this week or not. If it doesn't, then we will obviously see what else they have in store for us on the weekly rotation for people to be able to pop in. But yes, you do want to do it because you get that pinnacle cache, which is spark fragments. You get gold, you get some items of a quality. I think it was 574 that we were seeing previously, but I don't know if that's going to change with the season 1 rollover. We could see a more intense cache, which could be really nice. You get some Valor Stones, some Kedge, you get those carved Harbinger crests. You also get a restored coffer key and some resonance crystals, and then obviously you also get them gold and leveling up and that kind of stuff too, which is nice for people who are doing it on characters that are not max level. So definitely keep that in mind as well. All right, world events. Of course, you have the special assignment world quests. These are the world quests that have the lock on them that require you to do more world quests inside that area to then unlock the ability to do the special assignment one, get you that nice cash out of that. There's the theater troupe that you can do every week. There's also the Awakening the Machine up to the 20 waves. If you do the 20 waves, you unlock all of the little rewards that are out front inside of those chests. If you don't do 20 waves, make it all the way to the 20th wave, you don't get the last chest. So be sure you're working towards that objective. If you want tips and tricks on Awakening the Machine, the guys who channel with a cast, if you interrupt them, just go away. So just immediately save your stuns, disorients, interrupts, anything like that, knockbacks, for those guys, because when they come in, you can just eliminate them immediately by throwing one of those disruptions on them. And then the actual pillars that rise out of the ground and shoot lightning at things, you can put mobs between you and the pillar, and it will shoot lightning into the mob, which is much nicer than shooting into your character. So that is also certainly a nice tip for folks there, as well as the demo bots that explode will damage their own allies. So if you just, basically gather up all the mobs and then walk over a demo bot to set it into explosion mode and park those mobs on top of it, it will blow up and damage all of those mobs. So for folks who are struggling a little bit to get all the way through Awakening the Machine, those are some tips that could help you out a little bit with that. There's, of course, Spreading the Light, which seems to be the most intensive of the weekly events for people to sort of hop into, which is, over in Hollowfall, going up and actually empowering all of the lesser braziers that are there, and then being able to complete all of the tasks that sort of pop up from that. Hollowfall seems to be the zone to like hang out in. Not only does it have, obviously, when the actual crystal changes from light to void, you are then able to then find even more treasures, because there's particular treasures that only appear inside void and ones that only appear inside light. And so that is certainly a beneficial thing for your character. But also just in general, with the Spreading the Light event that's taking place, with the fishing derby that takes place, with the place where you plant the seeds from, herbalism to sort of get those out of the field. There's just so many reasons to just be in this zone regularly. And it's just really pretty. So let's just, give it that. It might not be my favorite zone of the zones that we have. It is a gorgeous zone, but it is one that I think I spend the most time in just because it just tends to be the most rewarding. I think something that maybe not a lot of people have caught on to yet is one of the reasons to loot all of the treasures and be inside Hollowfall for a long time is tinder boxes. Tinder boxes come from the treasures inside Hollowfall. Tinder boxes are currently selling for 8,000 gold on the auction house apiece. You can only find them in Hollowfall from doing treasures. I would recommend just hanging out in Hollowfall and looting treasures while you're doing things. So it is something that's used in a lot of crafting. So a lot of people want their tinderboxes. So be sure you're taking advantage of the tinderbox stuff when you're out there in Hollowfall doing Spreading the Light. The Severed Packs, of course, every week you are choosing which part of the Severed Thread Pact you want to actually help out and get the different benefits from that and get the different world quests. I guess not different world quests, but the different accessibility to vendors and whatnot inside the City of Threads for that. So be sure you're taking advantage of accepting which pact you want to accept and support which one you want to support. And then World Soul Memories, of course, that's something that everyone's going to be diving into this week with the increase in delves and delve rewards. So we'll see what people start to think about those. I will say these are instanced, they are time limited, and the creatures in there have several million hit points. So it is something that I would recommend. If you can do it in a group, do it in a group. If it's something you can do when you feel like you're most geared for the week, it's probably best to sort of wait for getting those upgrades and things first, because it is time limited and things have a lot of health. So you want to take advantage of that as much as possible. So just be sure you are when it comes to the weekly events. As far as PvP goes, there's a question.
Well, I was just going to say, like,
sure.
the biggest thing about the all these world events that you just covered is like, these are the sources of your restored coffer keys, right? And you want to make sure, if you're trying to, gear up and in game and all that, you want to get your 4 a week, and you can pick like any of these, right? Like you will get 2 special assignment world quests that roll up throughout the week, so you can just do 2 of those and then pick 2 of the other activities. There's a lot of flexibility, which I think is really cool. Like, you don't have to do all of this stuff if you don't want to. Spreading the Light, for example, is one you can just dip in. If you have the remnants, like, you can just go light up the key flames and then you're done. You can do the other stuff if you want to, but the rewards are they're scaled down. There's rep, there's good rep rewards from doing those objectives and quests there. And then you get like the currency that you get more remnants, which lets you light up more flames. And you can also use that to buy the consumables that you can use in that area. So if you want to hang out there, it's awesome. If you want to just cruise by, drop off your remnants and get your cash, you can do that. Awakening the Machine is a thing that I feel like is going to become, towards the end of the season, it's going to just become a nuisance, because there's going to be no challenge there if you're geared up, So that might be a thing you just don't do. And then you can kind of focus on some of this other stuff. And then, like you sort of alluded to earlier, you might end up in this loop where you can kind of do Bountiful Delves for the World Soul Memories currency, and then you're geared up and you can just pound waves and World Soul Memories and then get keys that way, and just sort of cut out some of these other things, which I feel like is a kind of interesting design, because I could definitely see some of this stuff getting repetitive if it was something you felt like you had to do every single reset week on any tune you cared about playing. Right now, everything's fresh. All this stuff feels pretty fun to me right now, but it's week 2, It's not even week 1 of the season yet. So I really like the fact that the stuff is built in with where some of the stuff seems like it's just going to become obsolete, right? And you sort of graduate out of having to do it, and you can get your keys from other sources.
Yeah, and I think that's an important note, is just the fact that when this might sound like a long list of things, I was highlighting it from a, hey, there's so much to do and it's so fun and you can dive in and get all these rewards. But what Jason's highlighting is important too, is if you have limited time for the week, you only get 4 keys from doing these things. And so you only need to pick 4 that you do, and you can choose ones that are super easy to do, right? You can essentially, like Jason said, sort of do spreading the light in about, I don't know, 3 minutes by just flying in, lighting up the braziers, flying out, and you've now completed what you need to do. That's done, off the list. You know, the Severed Threads is contributing towards this group, which I think is 4 world quests is what it ends up being overall. So really it's like, hey, accept this, pick some world quests throughout the week you want to do, get those ones done. That might take you, 30 minutes or so. You've got another one from that. The World Soul Memories is 5 minutes. That's the limit. That's all it takes. So literally, you only have the 5 minutes. So you will need to do a Bountiful Delve to actually get the thing that opens a World Soul Memory. But if you choose to do one, yeah, it's literally a 5-minute event. So that can be done pretty quick. So a lot of these things you can pick and choose which ones are going to be easy to do. So that's certainly something that's on the list as well. All right. The PvP brawl for the week is Warsong Scramble. It's Warsong Gulch with modified rules. To win, you need to be the first to capture 10 flags. And basically you can cap the flag regardless of whether or not your flag is at your own base or not. So people are just sprinting back and forth trying to cap flags as fast as possible. And so if you're someone who wants to earn yourself some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor, that is going to be a way to start doing that. It's important to note that this week is when Season 1 of PvP kicks off as well, which means that people are going to start doing the PvP grind. So if you're someone who's out there who's like, hey, I want to get a whole bunch of Honor and a whole bunch of Renown, and it's not Renown, a whole bunch of Conquest, to be able to spend all of this Honor and Conquest on, gearing up and getting ready for PvP, it all kicks off today or tomorrow as well. So just keep that in mind. Okay, overall, we have no real Mythic Plus stuff until we kick off next week. So just keep that in mind. But Mythic Zeros are going to be going up tomorrow. So people will be diving in to start running those and getting rewards from those. So
it'll be our first real look at the dungeons. I feel like Heroic is tuned very simply. There's not a lot going on. So tomorrow we're going to start really learning how these dungeons tick. Also, Heroic item level does shoot up tomorrow. So you get 580s dropping from Heroic dungeons. Remember, if you've been out for a while, Mythic Zeros they're no longer Heroics, but a little bit harder. They're much harder than Heroics in terms of tuning. They kind of sit where Mythic plus 10 used to sit in the overall tuning kind of ladder. So they'll be certainly more challenging. They're also on a daily lockout now. They used to be weekly. It used to be, when we have our kind of ramp up weeks, our preseason weeks or whatever, it was like, all right, make sure you do all your Mythic Zeros once, right? Yeah. And now it's going to be kind of target ones that maybe have, loot that you want, try to get that stuff. Maybe you can do a particular dungeon every day this week if you want to try to target a piece of gear. So keep that in mind. I'll probably be doing quite a few Mythic Zeros this week, I have a feeling. Yep. And I'm excited to see what some of the stuff actually feels like, man. I mean, like I've done all the dungeons a bunch. I know what the interiors look like and I know what mobs are in there, but we haven't really gotten a good picture of what the dungeons are going to play like yet. And this week will be a much better look at what we can expect in there.
Definitely. The other thing we have kicking off this week is the Harvest Festival. This is the yearly Harvest Festival that is going to be happening in Azeroth, obviously all around the place. And you can essentially visit Orgrimmar or Ironforge and the feast tables that are outside there to get yourself some buffs. I believe it's a 10% experience buff for people who are wanting to do it. And then there's also a quest to pay tribute to Grom Hellscream in Ashenvale, as well as Uther the Lightbringer up in Western Plaguelands. This used to be like the event for leveling cooking way back in the day. It used to be, you could go there, you could spend like 20 or 25 silver on materials off a vendor that was there, and then just like max out cooking, buying just materials off vendors to cook over and over and over again right in front of you. And that was wonderful. I wish they'd do more with it now. It's going to run from the 13th of September to the 20th. So it runs for that week. And I mean, obviously, if you're still leveling alts or working on things, there's going to be some benefit to you there. But in general, this is like, hey, get the achievements crossed off your list for your long, strange trip. And I guess get into those mythic dungeons and other things that you're going to want to be doing for the week that don't involve doing Harvest Festival. So just keep that in mind.
There's not much to it, right? Like they really haven't added much to it over the years. I guess if you're trying to do some completionist thing and you don't have classic cooking maxed out, I think you can still do that. But There's no real gameplay benefit to that. It's just a thing if you want to fill out that tab. If you never went to Uther's Tomb after they did the revamp a few years back, it really is awesome looking. So you could go check that out. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot to it. Although it does mean that, as soon as Harvest Festival ends every year, that means it's time for Brewfest. So that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah. All right. As far as hot fixes go, the auction house was apparently something that they feel like they've now resolved issues that were causing a degraded experience in performance. There's obviously still work to be done, but it is certainly getting there as far as that progression goes. I think it's substantially better than where it was. I wasn't someone though who was so actively and adamantly using it for a steady period of time that I noticed this huge problem. The biggest thing I noticed was like, hey, my list of auctions I've posted isn't updating properly, which means I can't tell what I have on the auction house. That was the biggest thing that I was noticing, but they've certainly gone in and done a lot of work on this, so it's good to hear that they've made progress in that regard. They also apparently have found Khadgar. He has gone missing from Violet Citadel during Legion content and has now returned. So for people who are actually progressing through Legion content. So if you were someone who's like, hey, whoa, just because everyone else who's up there around that level 70 point has had a Khadgar go missing thing happen in storyline wise, doesn't mean that me, who's, trying to level up at level 25, doesn't get to see Khadgar when I go to Legion, because I chose Legion as the expansion I want to level in. Like, come on now, where is this? So yeah,
I can see how that would be a problem. Khadgar was rather involved in the events of the Legion, overall questing and everything. So yeah, that's good. He's back where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. We also saw some hotfixes come in for classes. One of the ones that I noticed was they adjusted Druid's steady flight so that their speed better matches that of mounts. Yeah, their steady flight was slower than that of mounts, which was weird. And I don't know why, but yes, that's been adjusted. So that's at least closer. So people are still zipping around inside their bird forms if they want to. We also saw some fixes come in for Demon Hunters. The Eldraki Reaver, the global cooldown triggered by Reaver's Glaive, is now reduced by haste, which is actually a pretty big change. This is something that was not in there before. So if you are someone who's like, hey, wait a minute, this is now actually cooling down faster than it was before. What happened? The cooldown has gone from being like 3 seconds to being 2.2 seconds. Well, that's because it's now affected by haste, which is pretty big. So that's a nice little buff for the Demon Hunters over there. As far as Paladins go, man, they are prepping, because we're going to talk later in the show about 11.05. They're prepping for a rework of your class. Man, it is going to be a huge overhaul. So what they're doing right now is like, hey, we want to be sure that you guys are viable for the next few months before that patch drops, because we're probably going to see, I think Jason's thinking end of October, I'm thinking beginning of November, we're going to see the 11.05 patch drop, and that will be with the anniversary event content in it, as well as a massive amount of class reworks for essentially what we believe is content that, it is something that if they had a few more months, they would have put in earlier. So we'll talk about that a bit later in the show. But yes, just be aware that a lot of the changes we're seeing come in for Paladins right now are like, hey, we still want you guys to be fun and have fun for the next few months. Let's give you some buffs and boost you up a bit to make you feel like at least the buttons you're pressing are being effective, and that you're going to have fun inside Mythic Plus and raid content until the rework comes in. So there was a bunch of changes with that. As far as delves go, they reduced the damage of fungal breath from the invasive spore cap rare that's in there. Yeah, that was a lot of damage if you happen to get hit by that. So I'm glad that they did an adjustment on that. They also went through pretty much all the delves and did not just little bug fixes with things like Bran should no longer sometimes miss his attacks. Like, yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bran. That's why I leveled you up, so you wouldn't miss your attack.
Exactly. So things like that got fixed. Also, Bran is now dodgier. That's another one that they put in there, and the actual rest of it is, yes, that's a note. But they also went through and were like, hey, inside of Earthcrawl Mines, Earthen can now ingest nearby minerals when clicking on Bran's campfire for health and mana regen. So the Earthen fix that not only got buffed, where they were actually finding that it's a DPS loss for Earthen to eat gems, is no longer a thing. They've now buffed that back up, and now they've sort of included Earthen a bit more inside of these delves as well, which is good to see. The Cinderbrew Meadery and Darkflame Cleft, as well as Dawnbreaker and City of Echoes, are now available while leveling new characters for players that have completed the campaign. So if you're someone who wants to level up and do it through these more endgame 4 dungeons, you can do that once you've completed the campaign on another character. You can get your alts into these dungeons and level in there, which is pretty great for those alt characters too.
It's cool. I have mixed feelings about this, I'll be honest. I think it's okay. It's a little like doing like spamming normal dungeons, I think is like the fastest way to level, unfortunately. I don't love that method, but it's a lot of XP really fast. And it was a little maddening, like getting the same 4 dungeons over and over again, right? If you were just going to sit down and chunk dungeons for a couple hours. So now you have more variety. You have all these different dungeons in the rotation, but you know, I don't know. I don't think like when I'm trying to level up a character and maybe I don't really know what I'm doing yet, even if I know the dungeon, like Dawnbreaker isn't really one I want to queue into, right?
There is that.
Yeah, and Darkflame too. Like I think Darkflame's a cool dungeon, but these dungeons, the max level dungeons are a bit more complicated. They require a bit more coordination and everything, and when you're leveling up, like you don't have your full toolkit yet, and you don't really maybe know what you're doing exactly. You're still kind of figuring out sequencing and stuff, so. It's that double-edged sword, you know. What would you rather have, the repetition and the monotony of the smaller pool, or the more complexity and difficulty with having the max level dungeons in there? I don't know.
I mean, my opinion on this is they're doing this for queue times. They're doing this so that there are more people available to queue for normal dungeons. So if you're someone who just hit max level, you don't want to do heroics yet, you're trying to do normals to try and get gear, you're more likely to get into a dungeon queue faster, because this pool has now been extended out to everyone who's also leveling characters. And the fact that these only become unlocked for people who've already leveled a character, it's not available for your first time through, I think means that people essentially are then in a position where, okay, most likely you've seen these before, you know what you're getting into when you get into this. Yes, it could be a new character with new abilities and talents that you're still learning, but you've probably seen Dawnbreaker before on a character if you've already leveled one to max level, or you easily could just queue into one on your max level character to see it before you bring an alt in. It's really that kind of decision making.
I mean, that part is smart because you really don't want somebody's first experience with a War Within dungeon to be Dawnbreaker or Darkflame Cleft or something. Even on normal, it's just there's just way more complexity to something like that than like the Rookery, for example. So I mean, I'm sure it does help round out those normal queues, which are about to probably see quite a bit of relief, in short order here. But still, it helps with that, and I think it does help, break up monotony a bit for people who are just spamming dungeons. So, overall, I did notice it because I was leveling up my paladin, and I was like, well, I'm sort of in that soft spot now. I'm not quite like 78. And I kind of did everything in the outdoor world, so I guess let me just slam some dungeons for a couple levels. Yeah. And then I ended up in these, and I'm like, well, I guess that's new.
Yep. Also, speaking of Dawnbreaker dungeon, druids can now use their flight form in that dungeon while in combat, which is kind of interesting. So definitely keep that in mind as well. Okay. They fixed an issue. Let's just say they did some tuning with the Awakening the Machine event, where the med pack on the ground that drops from some of the bots in there now lasts 2 minutes, up from 1 minute. So you have longer to run over those. You don't have to pick them up or anything. You just run over them and it will heal up your dude in the middle that you're protecting. They also decrease the damage on the automatic Iron Strider as well as the malfunctioning pylon. And then the nullification barrier duration was decreased to 2 minutes. And they addressed an issue where nullification barrier could persist after combat, which is weird. So I'm glad that got resolved as well. So just keep that in mind in there and fixing stuff up in there. They also fixed an issue where where flying on the Beladar spawn mount could cause frame rates to drop. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get one of these, a little punishment isn't. It's fine. I'm glad they fixed it. I'm glad.
You just have to lose your frames, right? Yeah,
lose your frames as part of the acceptance of riding around on this incredibly rare mount. For those who don't know about Beladar spawn, every time the crystal changes over to being void inside of Hallowfall, Beladar's spawn will arrive as a rare, and essentially the first raid team who gets to it to slam into it, a raid group who gets to it to absolutely destroy it, will essentially get a chance at getting the mount off of the drop. And so some people have started to get these, and it is an agonizing experience because the mob does not have enough health to live longer than like a minute and a half when one of these raid groups arrives at it. So it means that you're very unlikely to find it unless you've joined up with one of these and you happen to be in one that's spread out far enough and happens to see the correct thing. So yeah, in general, it's a little tricky to get. So just keep that in mind. If you die in Draenor, apparently there's another fix for flying. You get a temporary spectral mount that will no longer use skywriting. So that's a thing too. Okay. Pet battles. You may now search for PvP pet battles on the Isle of Dorn. Apparently that wasn't a thing either. So good to know that got fixed and is now a thing. Because people who want to do PvP pet battles need to be able to do so. So you don't have to go somewhere else to do that. You can be in the current expansion, which I think is great. They correct an issue where War Mode role quests may display no reward for completion. Yeah, it's important to know what reward you're going to get. And if you can't see that, then that's something that's, I'm glad got all fixed up for folks. They fixed an issue where one of the profession specialization tomes in the City of Threads that you could purchase with Kedge was unable to be used unless you used it in a specific order. So yeah, that's a weird one, but that was another fix that came in for that. They also fixed up a whole bunch of questing. Like Jason mentioned, he was able to get in there for the questing bonuses and was all taken care of as far as finishing off his lore master, which was great. And as far as races go, yep, like I said, they increased the effect of the Earthen's Well-Fed secondary stat bonus, as well as Belga's gems are now edible to Earthen with improved quality and greater reduced cost. So all of us Earthen folk out there can be sure that we're getting the best rewards out of that sort of stuff. I think it's a good first pass of hotfixes. I expect to see even more on Thursday this week, but they certainly are going in and tuning up and finding all the bugs and getting stuff resolved. And I'm finding fewer and fewer instances where I'm like, ugh, they need to fix this. The one that stands out the most to me so far is still very much when I turn in a quest, I still have to run away from the quest mob before I can move back in and accept the next quest. That's still a thing that happened on my Earthen this week. So that is, I assume, a happening at some point down the line fix. I don't know what is failing to trigger, but something is failing to trigger there that's allowing you to actually grab the next quest. So I'm sure they'll get that resolved in short order. Okay. When we talk about class tuning incoming on this week. So tomorrow there's going to be a class tuning pass that's supposed to comes in from Kyvax, who says, with scheduled weekly maintenance on September 10th, we're going to reduce the effectiveness of a few new class tier sets that would otherwise overperform relative to our targeted values. We will also increase the baseline damage of the affected specs to account for the tier set tuning. We will look forward to additional tuning that will develop during Heroic Week, which will address anything needed for PvP, Mythic Plus, and Mythic rating on September 17th. So let's see what we're looking at here. These tier sets are specifically for Unholy and Blood Death Knights, Havoc and Vengeance Demon Hunters, Devastation Evoker, and Enhancement Shaman. These are the only sets they're touching. For those of you who are unaware, there are going to be dungeon tier sets that drop for folks who all throughout this week while you're running stuff. So keep that in mind. But there's also going to be actual tier sets that drop out of the raid. And since we have normal and heroic raid happening, these are the ones they're tuning. So if you're like, hey, I got this, piece out of a dungeon thing, or I, was going to do something else that's different. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the raid gear here. So Unholy, they're buffing the damage on their tier set. The Blood are also getting a buff in their damage on their tier set. We're seeing similar buffs across all of these specs. The one that gets the least buff is actually Enhancement Shaman, but all of these are getting tuned up. So for folks who are worried about things being tuned down, in general, you'll be tuned up. Some of the balancing that's taking place, though, like Havoc Demon Hunter, for example, their ability damage is being increased by 4%, but their 4-set bonus, the damage of Chaos Strike, is being reduced to 12% from 20%. And it now reduces the Fury cost of Blade Dance by 30% from 50%. So they're sort of doing that like, hey, we think this was a little out of whack as far as how this ability went, but we don't want to take this down and have your overall damage drop with this tier set. So we're going to raise your damage up by 4%. So there is some balancing taking place, but if you're playing one of those specs and you were like counting on your tier set to be this particular power spike based off of what you'd seen of it so far, that power spike's been adjusted. So just keep in mind as far as that stuff goes, but obviously they'll keep an eye on it going forward. Okay, Jason.
Similar to like what we were talking about, was it 2 weeks ago about how they were nerfing the season 4 Dragonflight sets, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of the same sort of idea. Like, you want these sets to be good. Like, it should be desirable to acquire your new seasonal set and to use the bonuses. But sometimes the power pie, the slices get to be the wrong size. So, just kind of rolling some of that power into the class baseline. I think that's going to feel better for most players, especially at the outset of a brand new expansion season 1. It's going to be a little while before most people put the 4-piece together, at least a couple weeks, right? So yeah, I think this is probably good. You want the sets to be good, you want them to be cool, you want them to feel powerful, but also you don't want the class to feel like garbage without it, especially when it's a brand new season 1.
Yeah, exactly. All right, War Within Season 1 begins tomorrow. Here's the old kickoff blog for doing all this. So I guess we'll highlight what's coming out. So on the 10th, we have Nerebar Palace on normal and heroic difficulty in Raid Finder Wing 1 for people to have access to. We have the Mythic Zero dungeons, which Jason mentioned should feel like plus 10s from last season for folks who were playing back then. So keep in mind they will be a more challenging experience for folks. You will see the heroic seasonal dungeons come in. You will see the new world boss, Kordak, become available, and the other 3 to come in following weeks. The PvP season kicks off for folks who are into Arena and all of the other PvP associated things like Rated Battlegrounds. We will then have essentially the rest of the week to sort of explore that content before diving into the 17th. On the 17th of September, we will have the Nerebar Palace on Mythic difficulty, as well as Raid Finder Wing 2 with Mythic Plus dungeons, and the story mode for Nerebar Palace will come out and be available then for folks who just want to know the storyline and what takes place there. This will be an accessible version for you to get in and essentially just experience the story. I don't even think you need to queue up with anybody. I think you can solo queue into the story mode, if I remember correctly.
It's supposed to be soloable. Yeah. It's just the last boss, but it will show you, the ending story beats of the whole raid, which, it makes sense. Parts of the campaign kind of leave it hanging. You play through Ashkahet, and you get to the point where it's like, okay, we're like actively undermining Anthrek. Like we have to confront her at some point. So if you're a solo outdoor player, whatever, this is for you. You can play this at your own pace. There's usually a quest involved too, right? With like defeating the final raid boss of whatever current tier is, which presumably you'd be able to complete this way and get the quest completion, whatever rewards that gives. It usually gives decent rewards. So really cool addition. I think there's a lot of players that will take advantage of this that wouldn't maybe do LFR even, right? Like, or even for me, like I'll raid it on my warrior with my team, but on the other characters, like I won't play it. I won't go do LFR or anything, right? So I'll probably do this that week that it comes out on the alts just to get the quest done and everything else.
Yeah. And then we have Raid Finder Wing 3 coming out on the 24th of September, followed by essentially, that's just the end of it. That's the end of the chunk of content unlocks. It'll be the 24th. So that's great. As far as the actual bosses that we're going to be experiencing, we have 8 bosses inside the current raid. There's a minimum Raid Finder queuable eye level of 567 to get into the Raid Finder to queue into that. So if you're someone who wants to experience this content, it's got to be 567. That's not too hard to achieve, so that's pretty accessible for a lot of folks, especially with the upgrade system that's in the game now, to hop in there and do some Raid Finder at level 80. We will have, obviously, the Mythic Plus season kicking off as well. That's 2 weeks away. That's going to be Arakara, the City of Echoes, City of Threads, Stone Vault, difference, the Dawnbreaker, Mists of Tyrannosaith, Necrotic Wake, Siege of Borealis, and Grim Patrol. That will be what happens week after the week that we're coming into now. And then, of course, we have the seasonal rewards achievements coming in with that, with the Keystone Explorer, Conqueror, Master, and Hero, where you can get a variety of different rewards of that. And there will be a Tempered Hero title available for people who end up in the 0.1% of all players in your region when it comes to rankings. So that's all going to kick off the week after this one, so on the 17th of September. And on PvP Season 1, which does kick off tomorrow, you are someone who can earn your way up from Combatant through Elite, getting yourself that Forged Gladiator's Tabard and Forge that exists there for 2400 plus. If you're someone who ends up getting a high enough rating on that, as well as Weapon Illusions. There's Bloody Tokens and War Mode gear as well for folks to sort of get involved in. There's going to be the PvP mounts, where you can have the Vicious Skyflayer for people who earn Forged Combatant achievement, as well as the Forged Gladiator's Fellbat for getting 50 wins, 50 games, winning 50 games is the way they phrase it, as a Gladiator in 3v3. So keep that in mind as well. There are going to be titles for Combatant, Challenger, Rival, Duelist, and Gladiator. Again, earnable for folks who have not earned them yet. And Battleground Blitz will be a thing as well, with its own title rewards for Strategist, Forged Warlord, or the Forged Marshal. Will be those available as well for folks who want to get that. Forged Marshal is a pretty cool title. I like that. And the Forged Warlord, nice shout out back to the classic days for folks who were doing PvP back then. Good to see. Lots of gear that you can obviously earn and get in that, including like particular transmogs for Gladiator's Tabard and Cloak and Pennant and that sort of thing, as well as the Unbound Strategist Pennant as well, which is achievable for achieving the Battleground Blitz Medic achievement in War Within. Delves. Basically, delves are expanding out. You're going to be able to do higher level delves that are higher than +3, starting up tomorrow. So folks are going to be diving into those, and we'll have the ability to start getting some rewards as well as earning some better gear. For folks who are curious, what's the best way to earn your vault for next week? It's actually to do the highest level delve you can. The Mythic Zeros do give a reward out of your vault for the week. But if you can actually max out your delve for the week, then you can get the best, highest level reward, item level wise, from doing that. So keep that in mind for people who want to push for that item level out of their vault. That'll be a good way to do it. All right. We're there, Jason. Celebrate World of Warcraft during its 20th anniversary. This was a 8-minute video that came out on YouTube that just basically screamed, hey, we want to get everyone pumped up and excited for what this 20th anniversary is going to look like. And so now we get to find out. And yeah, this is going to be massive. The quick facts that they gave us is we're going to have an event that's going to last for the months of November and December. I wouldn't be surprised if it got extended into January. I'm just saying there's a lot to this. You can earn and spend a new currency called Bronze Celebration Tokens. And that basically you can spend on new items for your collection. We don't necessarily know what all of those are, but there are some ones that they previewed. You can engage in the Black Rock Depths raid dungeon, where they have tweaked this experience for folks to actually get in there and raid Black Rock Depths, as well as collect iconic Tier 2 transmog appearance sets. So for those who really crave that Tier 2 gear, you can collect all of those. You can go time walking through classic World of Warcraft dungeons, which means that we're probably going to see this added to the time walking rotation after this actual event finishes. And they mentioned like going into, dead mines and doing dead mines as a time walking dungeon, which I think is cool. I'm looking forward to that. You can earn a new mount, the Blizzard Service Employee Award cosmetics, and more. So there's a new mount you can earn. What they mean by the Blizzard Employee Service Awards is they basically added a helm as well as a shield and sword transmog to the game. And these are modeled after the service rewards that Blizzard employees get for being at the company for a set amount of years. So they added those into the game. That's a pretty cool thing for folks too. This whole celebration is going to take place in an expanded event area for the Caverns of Time. A lot of it is actually happening outside of the Caverns of Time, so you don't have to go down into the party space as much. So you'll be able to be out there. You're going to be joining Chromie on new time-bending adventures with the Codex of Chromie, as well as discovering new secrets that you can solve and solve them with guest relations. So this is, they did a shout out to the secret finding community, and they're sort of going to be doing like a Secrets of Azeroth style event that folks can try and solve the puzzles for to get rewards from that. There's going to be the party crashing world bosses of Shaw of Anger and Archivon the Stonewatcher that are going to be up that you're going to be able to knock out. Man, I do wonder just how available the Shaw of Anger mount is going to be from this. Whether or not you could actually go back to Pandaria, kill Shaw of Anger there regularly like you do for your normal lockout, as well as then kill Shaw of Anger a second time during this event and potentially double your chances at getting the mount during this event. That would be a neat thing to be able to do. As well as Korok's Revenge is back in Alterac Valley, and the 30 Years of Warcraft celebration is going to be a Warcraft 3 themed back appearance at the trading post. And these, to me, were some of the highlights. These were very iconic, really make you feel like the franchise sort of back pieces that I have to have all of them. I will be banking currency to make sure I have enough currency in November to buy all of these back pieces, because and along the same lines, I hope they cost 50 currency a piece. I hope they just make them super cheap so everyone can buy them, because they're so cool and no one wants to like not be able to afford them because they're 800 a piece or something and you literally don't have enough currency to be able to buy all of them. That would just be so sad.
I think they're the bonus reward because it says players will be able to fill the month's bar to earn them.
Maybe.
I think you're just getting these from
that
doing Trading
amazing.
Post. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm led to believe by what the blog says. So,
well, that would be one of the best ones they've done for that.
I mean, they look incredible. Sure. They're all the racial sigils from the 4 playable races in Warcraft 3, and just super like high res, and they look great. I mean, we knew 20th was coming up, right? Like, obviously, we could do math. We have calendars. And I was thinking, like, they really got to go over the top. Like, they got to swing for the fences for 20, man. This is a big one, and it's 30 years of Warcraft itself, 20 years of WoW. And they went so far above and beyond what I was thinking would be like swinging for the fences, I mean, the big highlight for me is the Tier 2 getting reskinned and doing these brand new modeled super high res takes on Tier 2. They look incredible. I think Tier 2 is really like the most iconic of all the tier sets across the board, like just the highest batting average. When you think about what World of Warcraft looks like and what the classes look like inside the game, for me, it's like Tier 2 and Tier 6 is kind of a decent contender, a decent runner-up, and then everything else kind of slots in from there. And we kind of got Tier 6 redone back in Legion during Tomb of Sargeras.
Yeah.
They sort of did like a take on, what if like Tier 2 was like super corrupted and evil sort of during Hellfire Citadel and Warlords, but not the same thing as like what they're doing here is just, this is something that I've wanted forever. Because, like they did a bunch of the Tier 2 sets as skins in Heroes of the Storm. And it's like, why does this armor look better in Heroes of the Storm than it does in WoW? Finally, all these years later, they're just doing the whole thing. And they're introducing new sets for the classes that didn't exist back then that are like, just really bring that class fantasy forward.
Yeah.
The Monk one, I think, looks cool. The Death Knight one looks really cool. Even the Evoker one, like, it's really based on Nefarian's armor from Blackwing Lair, and that looks really cool. So that might be a reason to like walk around in your visitor's form to show off your Nefarian armor. So that I love that. What a cool touch that was.
Yeah, I think that the Monk one is actually one of the best tier sets I've seen for a while that they actually pulled off.
It's incredible.
Very cool. Yeah.
It really brings that class fantasy forward. And another cool thing, like it seems like everything's going to run through this currency, including the tier armors and stuff. So that's great. It seems like it should be really flexible to collect everything if you want to put the time into doing the anniversary activities. They're bringing back a lot of the pets from yesteryear, from previous anniversaries, right? And like a buddy of mine who I've been playing with since Mists, he frequently it travels at a certain time of the year, right? And it is around like that anniversary window. He missed the Molten Corgi.
Oh no!
Yeah, that was the 10th, I think, right?
Yeah.
He missed it. He couldn't log in. He was not in the country for that 2-week period or whatever. Like his mom had a corgi. Like he's a big corgi guy in addition to just the Molten Corgi being a great pet. And like it's been kind of a running joke for the last 9 years. Like, hey man, look at that. Hey, do you have a Molten Corgi yet? But now he'll be able to get one. So. Yeah. I love bringing that stuff back. Just even calling back to the history of the other anniversary events, I think is really cool. Bringing back like BRD and having multiple different difficulties for it. Like that's another one that I've sort of joked with somebody I've been playing with since Cataclysm about like she can't navigate the modern raids, but if you go back and do like BRD with her, she knows where everything is. So which BRD is like one of the most confusing layouts in my opinion. But so like it's her time to shine, I'm sure she still remembers all the nooks and crannies in BRD. So that's going to be super fun. And just like, this is probably going to come in as a lot of teams have sort of plateaued with Nerebar Palace and maybe need a little something extra to do. So I love that. I mean, calling back to the Secrets of Azeroth event, I thought that was so cool when they did that in Dragonflight. So doing one around the anniversary seems like it's just perfect, right? It's a perfect kind of thing to do around the anniversary event. I'm so excited for this, man. Like this just blew me away last week. I knew that they were going to do something cool, but I didn't think they were going to remodel all of Tier 2 for every single class and everything like that, The classic time walking is something that they've, sort of kicked around for a long time, and they kind of gave their reasons why they didn't want to do it. And they did say, like in the video, it will be added after the event's over. It will be added into the normal rotation of time walking weeks. I think those dungeons are going to be kind of weird. Like, Deadmine, Zul'Farrak, Dire Maul, East and West, and Living in Undead Strat.
Like to me, just first was, I'm gonna love Living in Undead Strat because I've spent so much time in that space over the years, especially with when there was the Culling of Stratholme event happened and they redid that. Like, I spent so much time in that dungeon that it is one of those like classic Warcraft feels. Like, it doesn't matter what time of year it was. If I go into that dungeon, I'm like, this feels like this time of year. Like, right now would feel like going in around Halloween, and in a couple months it would feel like going in around Christmas. It would feel like, because I spent so much time in there over the years, that like it does feel like everything for me, as far as it is World of Warcraft for me. It's just one of those things.
I mean, I think they picked some great ones. It's kind of a great selection of dungeons that if you played in vanilla, you probably spent a fair bit of time in at least a couple of these, right? I think at one point in time walking was tuned a little differently, and I think it was a bit of a different experience. In recent years, like, time walking dungeons are just blast through them. So I think some of the awkwardness around maybe a dungeon like Zul'Farrak, right, where you have sort of these weird objectives inside the dungeon to get stuff to progress, and I think that's going to feel fine because there's not going to be a lot of texture to what's happening. You're just going to kill everything, so that's okay. And yeah, I mean, time walking's been kind of due for a refresh, right? We haven't seen much in a few years now. And they sort of made a reference to the fact that it wasn't BFA's turn yet, but it was coming. So yeah, I think we're getting a lot of new time walking stuff throughout War Within, because like, we know we're getting classic time walking, and we know we're getting new vendor rewards, so new reasons to spend your badges. And it sounds like BFA is going to come in too, and that'll probably have even more vendor rewards and stuff. So good reasons to be doing that and saving up your badges, because that stuff is always fun. I'm really excited for what they have cooking up. I think, like I said, for me, I had a really kind of high bar of expectations, and they just sailed over it. Like, I cannot believe the amount of stuff they're packing into this event. And I love the fact that just out of the gate, they're saying it's going to be at least 2 months. I think
that made me very happy.
Yeah, like the typical anniversary event's usually about 2 weeks, and that's, like I said, I mean, I know people who've had issues with, like, at the time of year it comes in, it's just not convenient to spend time in the event. Having a nice wide span of time for people to check it out, I think, is great. And for 20, it's absolutely the right thing to do. Maybe for 21, you don't do a 2-month-long anniversary, but for 20, I mean, I think a lot of us just want to kind of bask in this and hang out in it and just get everything on offer here, just do as much as we can and get all these cool things to collect. Because really, it's like a celebration of the community. A big reason why stuff like Tier 2 is so iconic is because people care about it still, Like, if we had all moved on from all this stuff, then it'd be like, whatever, okay, it's just old armor skins, like, nobody cares. But I mean, we have a lot of time and a lot of energy invested in this game and in this world, and there's such a huge community around it. Like, I think acknowledging that with the stuff that they know people think is cool is really great. So I mean, I'm sure we'll get more updates about different stuff. They probably didn't tell us everything, but it'll be here before we know it, really. I mean, we're on such a fast track right now with content rolling out. Like, we'll probably just be like catching our breath from Nerebar Palace stuff and sort of figuring out the landscape of season 1, and then it'll be time for the 20th anniversary patch.
Yeah, the the other thing that's happening with this patch is we are getting the Drakthir adjustment, right? This is coming in with this as well, where we're seeing that that we're going to have some new classes available for those Drakthir lovers out there. We're going to have Hunter, Rogue, Priest, Mage, Warrior, or Warlock available for Drakthir who want to hop in and essentially play a different class and a different role in this. So that's going to be available, with folks being able to experience, I guess, what it's like to be a Warlock Dragon, which I think everyone kind of at some point in their life should probably experience. And we're also seeing some adjustments to the Drakthir racials. The Tail Swipe cooldown is being increased, as well as the Wing Buffet. The biggest thing as well is that Tail Swipe and Wing Buffet no longer automatically shift you into Drakthir for all except the Evoker class when you're doing this. So they are tweaking those racials a bit, and we'll see those get tweaked, as well as the Evoker class itself is going to now have a Clobbering Sweep ability, which reduces the Tail Swipe cooldown by 2 minutes so it's a much more substantial reduction, as well as the heavy wing beats, which reduces it by 2 minutes as well, as opposed to 45 seconds in both cases. So it's a substantial buff to those abilities to sort of make evokers stand out a little bit more as the dragon class that they need to be, as well as the permeating chill is now going to be baseline for evokers, and heavy wing beats and clobbering sweep are no longer a choice node, and their position has been moved within the class tree so that you're essentially getting both of those as well. And yeah, overall, there's going to be this new thing called Squadrons, where Dracthyr players are going to be able to learn a new skywriting talent called Squadron, which allows you to fly with up to 2 other Dracthyr players in a formation as you soar through the skies. This is cool. I don't know how practical it is. I think there's going to be some multi-boxers out there that are very happy to a certain degree, but the multi-boxers I know also use static flight and don't use dynamic flight. But it's going to be cool for people who want to get together with some buddies for a bit. And there's nothing I can really shame about that. If they were able to pull this off, that's great. It's something that I assume if it works, they'll eventually add to other mounts so that you can have 3 dirigibles flying around in the sky inside a formation together if you want to.
That'd be funny.
But, just one of those things of, it's cool, neat feature. All right, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any practicality here at all, but you could maybe get some really cool screenshots and clips and, maybe make some machinima with it or something if you want to. So that's cool.
Certainly
It's just all flavor, but yeah, I mean, we kind of knew the Dracthyr classes were going to be expanding soon because they teased it out a bit in one of the previous videos they did around launch. And so here it is. It wasn't a very long wait at all. So that's cool. If that's what you want to do, you have some more flexibility there with your race class combos. And yeah, I think it makes sense to dial back some of these Dracthyr racials that, I mean, obviously Evoker's been using them since Dragonflight, but to dial them back in terms of frequency and all that, but then restore most of it to evokers. So that's, that's kind of I guess it makes sense. Because these all fit into the evoker kit in a particular way, right? And when you only have the race being this one class, then you can design around that. But, when you have these super low cooldowns on some of these disruption abilities for other classes, then that could create some other problems. So that's probably a pretty smart way to do it.
And then last but not least, the other announcement that came out in this is that there's going to be new Shaman Ascendance forms where they essentially have these very cool looking new Ascendance forms for the different fire, water, and air transformations that Shamans might be using. So if this is something you've been anxious for a while, you are now getting something that's a little bit more customizable when it comes to these forms. So definitely be excited about those if you're a Shaman. Yeah.
I think they're cool. I've seen some controversy. Some people don't like the way these look. I mean, the look is out there, right? They pushed this pretty far. This is not subtle.
They remind me of Bwonsamdi, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And that's the thing that I like about them. I think they're cool, but they're maybe not for everybody. They really went in a pretty extreme direction with the design. So, I dig them. I mean, they're probably due. When was the last time Shaman got an update on the Ascendance forms? It's been a minute. But hey, this is where the glyph thing could also come in. I guess if you really don't like them, you should be able to glyph them out. But I think they're cool. It's kind of funny they just slid them in this post about the Dracthyr. Like, well, we don't really know where else to talk about this, so there's also new Ascendance forms.
Yeah, exactly. It fits in here. So, yep, that was another thing on the list. All right, so with that, we also got patch notes. So the PTR has gone up for folks who are wanting to test some of these things. They're coming in with this patch for the 20th anniversary as well as other things. So folks who want to test out this stuff can hop on PTR and check it out. But yes, we have now begun the watch of what's happening with class reworks. And so this is the conversation I mentioned earlier in the show, where basically what it comes down to is, and I agree with Jason on this, that this feels like, hey, there was more we wanted to do with some of these classes, particularly things like Balance Druid, the Dark Ranger, Hero Spec for Hunters, Mistweaver Monks, Paladins, Elemental and Enhancement Shamans, where we're seeing like a full, and Deathbringer Death Knights, where we're seeing like a full rework of, in some cases, 11 new talents being added to some of these trees so that folks can actually have things around. Lots of stuff moved into baseline, stuff like whole talent trees being rearranged, the hero talents being swapped around, new talents being added. There's lots of things happening with these that I think it's going to really affect a lot of these classes in a big way. And what it feels like is, hey, these weren't ready for primetime launch with the beginning of the expansion. We were still tweaking things. We think we're in a better place. This is where we're at right now, and we can announce that because we're a couple months out from this going live, but expect there to be continued changes happening to all of this. Almost every spec and class was touched with some of the tuning fixes and changes that are going to be happening, but the ones that I highlighted there are like reworks, like they're actual like reworks of the class. Like Paladin is like a different class once 11.0.5 drops, so that'll be an interesting experience. So yeah, if you want to get out and start checking out the PTR and see what's being added, and as things get more and more things get added and changed to sort of experience what they're going to be doing, it's going to be a worthwhile adventure for you if you care about what 11.0.5 is going to feel like for your class. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a massive amount of, in my opinion, it's a massive amount of reworks to put through this early. It's good, I think, but
yeah, for sure.
This is kind of the push pull that we talked about during Dragonflight a lot of the time, because it came out, we're like, okay, cool. The talent system is cool. It feels good. It feels flexible. It feels powerful. That's good, but it's not really totally great everywhere, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of specs. There's some problems. Let's see how they keep it up. And then we kind of saw as time went on, they did huge reworks to many different specs throughout that sort of year and a half where Dragonflight was getting regular updates. They added a whole new spec, right? Augmentation Evoker came in as part of that whole process. And, coming into War Within, there was a little bit of grumbling about like, well, class design's not really there yet. Maybe they should delay this release because there are problems with class design and tuning. And it's like, they're not going to delay shipping stuff because of that, because they can always hot fix that, right? That's different than the things that they dial in for shipping.
Yeah, and what I want to highlight there is it's very uncommon for them to do this kind of level of changes outside of either expansion release or a major patch. So doing this sort of rework and fixes in a .5 patch is actually something we don't see that often. And so I'm really happy to see that, because when I think back to like Shadowlands and Elemental Shamans, for example, who were just broken for like 6 months and then continued to be a little bit broken afterwards. But really it was the case of, hey, basically you launched the game and my class doesn't work. Can you fix this, please? And really the response you got was, sure, we'll have a look at it in 6 months when we release the next major patch. And you're like, that's not acceptable. Perhaps there's another solution to this, and this is the solution. The solution is, hey, Raid's going to launch, and then late October, early November, we're going to see a huge rework and fix to a lot of these classes that need the touches that they're going to be getting. And I think there'll be a lot of happy people. I know so far people who've looked at Paladin have been thrilled about what is going to be happening with Paladin. So I'm excited for this, because it just means that, hey, this is a change in how they're going to be approaching this sort of fixes and changes to classes. They're not afraid to do it in a .5 patch. That's great.
Yeah, I think like if you've been out for a while, right, and if War Within is your first time back in retail in maybe, say, a couple years, if you didn't really play Dragonflight, like, this is kind of the norm that's been established since the class and spec talent revamp, is like, stuff is going to change. There are going to be interstitial patches that introduce massive changes to the way classes and specs play or are tuned. So, it is a little bit more burden on the player to understand that stuff is happening and to keep up with, what they should be doing. But none of this stuff is tied into anything except gaining levels, right? If your hero talents change, you don't have to go get more AP to unlock the other hero talents that you don't have.
Thank God.
You don't have to go get like Anima to go like switch your Covenant to like, there's no cost to the player other than building out a new spec tree, which is that is the flexibility that affords them to make these big changes. So I think for the most part it's worked out. I mean, we would have conversations throughout Dragonflight of like, is this too many changes? Are they changing things too much? And they change stuff a lot, but I don't think it ever felt like it was too much. I felt like the changes felt targeted at stuff that needed help. I also felt like they kept combat feeling fresh as the expansion kind of went on. And I mean, I saw a lot of people who play like Hunter who were not really jazzed about like Dark Ranger, for example. Dark Ranger is a really iconic kind of sub-spec in, or just like idea in World of Warcraft. I mean, you see like Dark Ranger in like Warcraft 3, right? And what does that look like in WoW? Wouldn't that be so cool? And then it kind of wasn't, but it's getting basically entirely rebuilt in this patch, for example. You know, Paladin you mentioned, like the whole class tree is getting sort of reworked again. You know, these are, I think really what it comes down to, my take looking at it, you know, from the outside, is that they had to lock stuff in to get it ready to ship, right? Yep. You got to do localization, you got to do all this stuff, you have this release date you're committed to, it's got to happen. And they knew that there was stuff that they wanted to dial in, but they needed more time. The early access and the kind of soft launch also bought them a little bit more time for people to play with it before you start getting into content that has really high stakes. And, you know, I think the hero talents give them a unique opportunity this time around to tweak stuff out and rebuild it sort of on the fly, because every player that's at max level is going to have all of it, right? You don't even really have to think. You might have a few choice nodes that you pick between based on a situation, but like there's no opportunity cost, right? There's nothing that you have to do differently if they change something. You just, okay, you have this now. This is how it works. Just understand it, incorporate it into your play style, and, you know, choose your choice nodes accordingly and go have fun with it. So I think that's really cool. I had to laugh because so many specs are getting touched, and you get down to the warrior changes, and it's like there's a couple arms and fury changes, and Prot doesn't even have a bullet. So I'm not that I really, at this point in time, I am happy with the way my class and spec feels and plays, and I'm having a great time with it. But it's just, that's sort of the running theme. I feel like since Dragonflight, you know, Prot was always sort of like, well, it's doing fine. We'll adjust some numbers, but there's no real big reworks on the horizon. And
right.
It's just funny to me. I'm fine with it. There's nothing I really want that I don't have, but it makes me laugh when you see like you know, these bolded lists of changes come out, and one class is getting like kind of rebuilt from the ground up, and there's not even a bullet for Prot or like any of the hero talents or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a place that they're happy with at the moment. And obviously, we are going to see live hot fixes take place in the next 2 weeks. That is an assumption that I have that has been consistent through every expansion. So I imagine we will see more tuning take place as far as that goes. But this is the stuff that's long planned out, probably that's been on whiteboards inside their offices for the last few months, that they just were trying to get honed in and sort of completed and worked out. Like when you're picturing about redoing a whole talent tree, you really have to be like, okay, well, at what level should they get this ability as far as an unlock goes? Where should that fit in this tier? Should this be inside this section of the talent tree or that section of the talent tree? So do you need to put 15 points in before you can unlock this? What part of the thread should you have to trace down to get towards this ability? Should this be a choice node or not a choice node? If it is a choice node, what's the other choice? Like, all those decisions have to be made, which just takes a lot of time to sort of suss that out and make it work well for what they're trying to accomplish. So it just wasn't where they wanted it to be at launch. This is their fix for it that they're coming through with the 3 months of extra time they got to work on it. And you know, I'm excited for this to go live for players, but I am glad to see it's just happening so quickly. That's what's going to be exciting for me overall.
Yeah, for sure. Like you don't want them sitting on, like you kind of alluded to earlier, like the old kind of model of, okay, it's just the big numbered patches where we change stuff, or just expansion patches. You know, they don't do that anymore. But I mean, really, it's the class and talent framework that lets them do that, because it is so flexible, right? And it's so transparent to players. It's not hard to understand how your talents like work in terms of building your spec out, right? So they have so much flexibility with it, and they can push stuff in hot fixes or whatever, and they can push updates faster than they used to be able to. So you know, the way that they built the framework around the way classes, specs, and now hero talents all work in the modern game, it gives them that flexibility. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, we could get into a larger debate about like, is it okay to ship this stuff in this state when they know it's not done? And you know, I wouldn't say that that's an invalid argument, but no. I think like different parts of the game have to serve different audiences at different times, right? And like your widest audience, after a couple years, like you want something new to play. You want new zones. You want a new level up experience. You want some new features and some new aesthetics. And I think they're in a spot with the way the game is built where they can kind of separate that stuff out. You can introduce that level up experience and give that stuff a few weeks to breathe, and then come in behind it with a patch that really dials in this nitty gritty gameplay stuff. And, you can kind of, shift your focus to these different areas when it's appropriate. I was cognizant of the issues with the tuning and some of the overall design around classes and hero talents and stuff coming into War Within, but I was never in the camp of like, please delay this.
No.
Like, I think we needed new stuff to come out. And again, we're talking about 20 years. We've been playing this game for 20 years. And that when new stuff comes out, the road is going to be bumpy sometimes. And there are going to be issues that need to get addressed via hot fixes and via smaller patches along the way. The thing is, I would say since the second year of Shadowlands specifically, like the WoW team has shown no hesitation to just go in and make stuff better via patches and really address the big pain points for players. So, if you're playing a spec that doesn't feel too great right now, but is getting some attention coming up in this first patch, like it definitely sucks. Like I understand the disappointment, right, of like, one of my friends, Rogues are really not feeling too great. They're not too happy about where they landed. And, I was talking to him a little bit before the expansion came out, and he's like, everybody else got all this cool stuff. And like, I just feel like I don't have anything like that. And I'm excited to play the new content, but like, it kind of stinks that we didn't get the cool stuff that some of the other specs got. So like that, that feeling sucks, and you don't really want to run into that, but WoW is such a broad game, and there are so many different elements of it that need attention at different points in time. I feel like as long as they don't take the foot off the gas for too long, that it's okay if different things are in different kind of states when stuff ships. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I think the biggest thing for me is I'd much rather things be in the state they're in right now, with hotfix and tuning happening to sort of make that class that exists feel like it can be at least perform on the same level as the other classes that are out there, and then have a big rework come in a couple of months later, than them just go, we're turning off paladins for this initial patch. No one will be able to play a paladin. It's just not in a state where it's playable. Like that to me would be substantially more harmful to the community than going, we haven't done as many cool things with paladins yet. We want to. We're a couple months out from putting that stuff into implementation. So for now, we're just going to do some buffs and tweaks to sort of make sure that they feel like they're viable and like they're, it's something, a class that can be played, but we're not just taking them out of the loop entirely, right? Like it would be so much more impactful to just be like, yeah, guess what? I know you're a paladin main, but you just can't play your paladin in this expansion yet. It'll be 3 months before we actually turn your paladin on so you can actually play your paladin, right? Like that would be substantially more harmful than going, yep, we didn't do as many cool things with them, but it's coming. Don't worry. We'll get there. It's happening in this patch. And here's the notes for that patch months before it happens. So you have some sort of idea that we are moving in a direction you could like. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, the example that you're giving is a bit extreme, right? Or like sort of fanciful. But like there were literally times in the game's like recent history where it was like, yeah, well, this warlock spec just isn't in the state that we want it to be. So they were essentially saying play something else until we can fix it. Like,
exactly.
I mean, they literally used to do that. Like, yes, you could log in and play the spec, but they knew that it didn't feel great to play or it didn't perform the way that it should perform. And it was just like, we'll get there when we get there. And, this was an era where maybe we'd get a patch every 6 months, and that was it. So we don't live in that world anymore, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I think like if you maybe didn't take the ride through Dragonflight, right, and from patch to patch, you might be coming back and thinking like, dude, how can they leave this spec or this class like this when others got so much more attention or they're in such a better place, and like it's going to take months and months to fix this. They haven't really operated like that in the recent history. They don't leave stuff kind of languishing. They'll go in and tweak it and try to, even if it doesn't feel great, then they'll try to goose the numbers so at least it's competitive while they figure out how to make it play more fun. So, which is kind of the least they can do. But I mean, we saw so many tuning passes and stuff in full reworks and everything throughout Dragonflight. I think that's just the new norm. I think that's part of the reason why they took the approach to class design that they did in Dragonflight with the specs and the class specs and the class trees and the spec trees and everything like that, because it lets them approach this in ways that they never could before. And they paid that promise off, right? It's not like, well, you could change this and you didn't. Like, no, they're now in a mode where they change stuff very frequently.
Yeah. All right. With this PTR build, you can also check out a few more fun little changes that are coming up. The character select screen, they're now going to put in a search field that lets you actually search for not just a character, but also you can search by realm or specialization name. If you're someone who's like, I want to see all of my enhancement shamans, you could actually do that. You can see all of them, which is kind of cool. So if that's something you want to do, or hey, I want to see all the characters I have on Sargeras, or all the characters I have on Stormrage, or all the characters I have on, you can search that way and have that be the field. And I like that a lot. I think it's a great feature. They're also going to put in a button to toggle the visibility of the interface that has been added next to the back button. So essentially you can go in there and hide the interface if you want to. Double clicking on the screen to access the visibility toggle if you want to, or you can hit escape, or you can Alt-Z. All of those things will let you essentially turn off the UI if you want to take some really fun screenshots of the layout and your dude sitting around the fire currently. I think that's certainly something you can do, and I love that. So I'm down for that. That's good to see. They're also,
I feel like that's going to come in really handy once we potentially get new
backgrounds,
warband backdrops, and maybe other props and stuff we can put in there.
Dude, I want my garrison to be one of them. I want to be able to pick my garrison as one of the backdrops.
That would be cool, actually.
You could literally have characters wandering through, because that was one of the neatest things about the garrison back then, is you just had all these characters just participating and being around inside of your garrison. Like, how neat would it be to have essentially something similar that's set up where, like, you know, a garrison's off in the background, a character's off in the background urbing, and there's one over there heading into a mine and coming out with, you know, stacks of ore, and there's two of them fighting inside of a little battle arena against each other, sort of sparring and figuring stuff out. Right? Like, that'd be so cool to see this backdrop.
Pet battling.
Pet battling. Two people pet battling each other, right?
Like a collection. That would be ridiculous.
There's lots of cool ideas.
I mean, hey, who knows? I mean, we're just at the very beginning of the whole warband concept and the warband login screen and everything. So, yeah, being able to toggle the UI off is going to make for some really cool, screenshot potential and stuff for setting up your warbands. Plus, it gives you a little bit more privacy. Maybe you want to share a screenshot, but you don't want to show your tune names or servers or whatever. So, this is a tiny little thing, but it's a really nice addition, and I think it portends, more and cooler and bigger things for the, something as simple as a login screen in the future.
Yeah, exactly. They're also making the currency transfer panel have a button that allows you to quickly input the maximum amount that you have of that currency for a character. So if you're like, hey, I just want to move all 130,000 of this resource over from one character to another, there's just a click button for max as opposed to having to type in the amount. So that is something else being added, as well as the learned curios can now be linked in chat from the curio slot or the selection list, as well as an interact icon has been added for the objects that open the warband bank. So that as well added in there. Outside of that, I think fixes wise, they're coming along with a lot of these changes, and I'm looking forward to this patch, and I'm looking forward to this list expanding. I think we're probably going to see this grow as far as what they're adding, particularly in the UI department, as they continue to progress on working on this PTR. So looking forward to that, and I'm glad this info's out there so early. It's just super exciting to have it available.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see any new other content other than what they've currently laid out, but I think it's reasonable to assume we'll see some more UI stuff and little quality of life things here and there. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more class stuff be tweaked and dialed in. So, if your class is on the list here with any kind of major revisions, then you might want to keep an eye on that. But yeah, this is sort of, I mentioned this in our Discord the other day. If you remember back in Legion, when I think Legion was just about to come out or had just come out, and then Gamescom was happening in Germany that first weekend or the weekend right before. I want to say it was Legion came out and then Gamescom was 4 days later. Yeah. And then Ian Hazzikostas was there, and he introduced the Return to Karazhan patch 7.1 and that whole thing. We should have a brand new game, and Legion was the launch was incredible with all the stuff there was to do and the way they incorporated all the the artifact stuff. And then 4 days later, it's and we're going back to Karazhan. They redid it, and there's all this different stuff, and we're getting all these other changes, and that felt so from what we were used to, especially coming out of the the lull from Mists of Pandaria, that second year into Warlords, and then finally Legion was here, and then we're getting another huge patch right away. This feels kind of like that, where it's like, okay, we're already eating pretty well, and now they drop this on us, and like when I don't know, this really, I figured we get a patch fast, right, based on the cadence we saw in Dragonflight, and I knew 20th was going to be a big deal, but like I said earlier, this just completely exceeded my expectations. Like, we're in for some really cool stuff here, I think, and I want to get everything I can possibly collect, please.
The part that I actually like fist pumped, cheered at basically out of this entire announcement though was that it's going to be around for several months. I was like, oh yeah, that's God.
The best part. Yeah.
Like I when I initially saw this, I was like, I'm traveling during November. There's going to be a week when I'm not at my computer. If this event takes place then, am I now just going to be, essentially screwed, or trying to figure out like a way to find a computer to get on, to log into a WoW account, to be able to get rewards for the 20th because I don't want to miss this, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, it's going to be around for a couple of months. I was like, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was a big relief.
I mean, I think, with the amount of stuff on offer here to do and collect and check out, like if you try to condense it all into the span of a traditional, anniversary window, everybody would feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Even if you got everything, it's all you would be doing probably for that like 2-week period or whatever. So yeah, I feel like just a lot of good decisions here with the way that they're rolling this out, and I'm so excited to check it out and to get all my revamped tier 2s. I want all of them, all 13 of them. If it's just like, hey, go do stuff and get the currency and then go back to the vendor, like I'll do it. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for it. All right. With that, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. This week, I'm giving a shout out to Alianas, Arajian, James, Kapawi, Max, Saucemaster 6000, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much. And we always appreciate what all of our patrons give towards our show. A big shout out and thank you to our newest patrons, Brad, Dustin, Randy, Thomas, and Bradley. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting us as well. This is a huge influx of patrons. So we're thrilled with that. And I know some of you have hopped in on a tier that will get your name listed every week as well on the episode. So we'll get you added into that and make sure that we are not only, appreciating your support, but making sure you're getting the rewards that you're earning through support and Patreon. If you want to hop in and support the show as well, you can do so at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And you can hop over there, support the show. Be sure you're doing it through the website, not through the app. We don't want you having to pay 30% more that doesn't go towards us at all, because it's just Google and Apple and app companies feeding off of people subscribing through their phones. So use the website, patreon.com/thestartingzone. And thank you again to our newest patrons. Thank you again to all of our patrons, past and present. You all support the show and keep it going and keep us on the rails and keep episodes coming out and got bonus content and all sorts of stuff happening. So thank you so much. And be sure that that you're, having a good time in this expansion, doing what you want to do. It's your time. It's your dollar. You're the one who's got to enjoy it. So keep enjoying the show. We'll keep making them and hope to hear more from everyone soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And welcome aboard, new patrons. I mean, just incredible support for the show. It's an exciting time, and War Within is, I feel like, a huge launch. We haven't heard anything so far about like how much they've sold or whatever. Sometimes when they hit like certain plateaus, they let us know. And I feel like this is the strongest vibes around the game I can remember in a really, really long time. And I think the team rose to the occasion. I think, as players and customers, that we're enjoying it, pretty much across the board. I've heard, obviously there's complaints. It's, wow, we got to complain about some stuff, but I feel like they did a great job with the product this time out, and it's reflected in people's attitudes about it. And it's been great to hear from people all over the place, like in the Discord and everything, and seeing people come back after a long time or seeing new people around our community is really awesome. So thank you for supporting the show, and hopefully we can provide you some signposts around like what we're doing as we move through this expansion. That is kind of our goal. Right now, I myself am trying to navigate it a little bit, but we'll get there. We got to get a couple weeks of rotation under our belt, and then the patterns will emerge.
Yeah, it's going to be certainly an easier thing in about 4 weeks' time to have a full rotation, know what's happening. Everything's been, sort of tuned in. And obviously over that period of time, we'll be continuing to drop those tips and tricks that help people hone in on how best to spend their time when it comes to trying to achieve different things in World of Warcraft with what they want to do playing the game. So definitely keep that in mind out there. And if you folks have enjoyed this episode, another great way to support us is to leave us those 5-star reviews over there on your iTunes and your Apple Podcast, or over on your Spotify, things like that. They really help out our show. They help raise us up those charts. And this one comes in from Prebent in Norway, entitled "Great Show, one of my weekly highlights." So I've been searching for a WoW pod that works while traveling to and from work, while doing stuff around the house, in the car with my kids and wife, or while I'm chilling before bed. It's to the point and doesn't drag things out too much, but goes in deep enough that it feels like valuable time online. That my valuable time online is optimized thanks to the insight provided. Love it. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Prebent. And Norway is on my list of places to visit. So I appreciate that you are listening to the show there. I will be making my way to Norway at some point in the next 10 years or something to get a nice, good establishment of the space. It's so pretty out there from everything I've seen. And I enjoy the Viking heritage and that aspect of things. So I'm looking forward to a trip out there at some point. So appreciate our listeners out there in Norway.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prebent, for writing in, and glad we could help you out. It's always nice to hear how people listen to the show and how they approach playing WoW because of listening to the show. So thank you for taking the time to write in, and great to hear from you. And yeah, awesome to hear from international listeners always. And, it's kind of, it's always weird. Like, we just kind of sit here in our rooms and we talk about WoW for a little bit, and then we put the MP3 out, and then all over the world people connect with the game and the show, and it's really cool. It's like the best part about doing the show, I think. So always awesome to hear from the international listeners especially, but it's always rewarding to hear from somebody who listens to the show and then gets something valuable out of it and applies that to maybe how they approach the game. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, that's going to wrap up episode 648 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or ask us a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or you can head over to our website, thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. And you can reach out to us as well on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can join our Discord server, thestartingzone.com/Discord. If you want to get your hands on some TSC gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. Got shirts and mugs and stickers and stuff over there. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internets?
So the best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, and you can also find me on Blue Sky. The username is just JLucas over there, so come say hi. You can find me streaming WoW on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Planning on streaming raid stuff and Mythic Zero stuff this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern. Probably watch on Twitch. Drops are still going on. Supported streamers still going on. So come hang out over on the Twitch channel. I might even stream like Thursday. It depends on how much M0s we get into this week. I might do some extra streams because if we're doing dungeons and stuff, I'll throw the stream on. And also, you can find me kind of as an impromptu guest on Countdown to Classic for this next episode that Josh has coming out, talking War Within. Josh has been in there playing, and a lot of his classic crew has been playing. So that was fun. They were recording the other night, and I was like, I'm going to hop in the town hall, and we'll just see if Josh pulled me in the talk. So check that out, too. That was a fun conversation, and I think there's something really cool about how Season of Discovery kind of built these bridges between the classic and the retail divide, and it let retail players check out classic a little bit more and find some more modern kind of ideas in there. And it also exposed some classic players like, hey, there is some cool stuff here. Like, what if you had this ability from a later expansion in vanilla? And then, just kind of open up those gameplay possibilities a little bit. And then when you deliver an expansion like the War Within experience like we got here, I think it's an easy transition. So I feel like those divisions between the two groups of the player base have crumbled just a little bit right now, and so that was a fun chat. So check that out too.
Very cool. Yeah, it's always nice to hear from Josh. So good to hear that. All right, if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or you can follow me over on YouTube at SpencerHD. I will probably stream on Sunday and Monday this week. That's probably going to happen because that is the new raid schedule that I have worked out. So hopefully that all happens smooth. For those who are unaware and have stuck around to the end of the show, I guess is the treat for you. I have rejoined a group that I raided with back in Shadowlands. They reached out to me out of the blue and basically said, hey, we have a spot for a Resto Druid for sure, if you want to do that. Otherwise, balance should be fine. And as we got closer and more members sort of came together on the team, it seemed like I was probably going to be starting with balance and then restoing as a swing position, which is sort of the position I held back in Shadowlands as well, back and forth between the two, which is a bit more work because you kind of have to be good at both specs and be able to gear for both specs and be able to play both specs. So it is a tricky thing, but I'm sort of diving head first back into that. That'll be probably clearing normal and hopefully clearing heroic as well, and then moving into mythic content the next week. So it'll be I think it's a 6-hour a week team, and yeah, the objective obviously is still cutting edge, and we'll probably be, I'm hoping, in top 100 alliance, or well, I guess it's not really alliance anymore because it's blended teams. So probably top 400 is what we're probably looking at based off of what ends up happening with the horde numbers typically. So probably top 400, top 500 teams would be a nice number to objectively hit for. And that will be something that I guess we try for. So if you're someone who's around on Sunday or Monday, I'll probably throw a stream up for those, and folks can check those out in the evening if you're about. And yeah, we'll be looking forward to that. Outside of that, the last little tip for folks before we head out is that, of course, those who are always a fan of the pineapple will be happy to know that Pineapple Palace is now available for folks who want to hop in there and learn some of the raid bosses in a fun little web-based game. I will include a link to that inside of the show notes as well, so folks can pop in and pick that up and have some raid bosses encounters learned through playing a Flash game, which is always an enjoyable way to learn that over watching a video or potentially listening to a guide. So I think that's a fun way for some folks to experience it, and you can find it in our show notes. With that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and job's done.